Okay. So today we'll focus on building database in SAP HANA. So how do we formulate database in SAP HANA? So I'm in this perspective called SAP HANA Modeler Bus. Okay. And I already have the system. I'm just logging into it. Just want to filter for. See, all these are your schemas, and we also refer schema as your databases. Let's say we are connected to HANA system, and then we would like to build a database for an application. So let's say we want to build certain application, and this application would need some data to be stored in the database. Now, when you got to store the data, ultimately you got to formulate the different set of tables in which the data would go and store. So if I need to formulate my database, I need to go about creating the schema, which will be referred as database. And into this schema, you start building up all your application tables. Now, first we'll start, how do I go about creating my schema and how do I start formulating the database in HANA? Okay. Now you can open your SQL editor. Once you have connected to the system, you can right click on this. You can say what? Open SQL console. This will open your SQL editor here. Or you can also click on this icon, open SQL console. Anyway, it's fine. And this one. Okay, now first thing is I would like to create a schema. Now when you got to create schema, you don't see most of the database artifacts like table, view, all those stuff. SAP has given you the UI screen where you can go over creating, or you can create with SQL. You can use SQL statements to create your any of the database objects or also UI, but most of them have UI and SQL. But for some of them, you have to go with SQL only. Now, when it comes to creating schema, you have to go with SQL, but there is a different flexibility of creating it from UI, but let's not worry now. Okay. Now, so I want to, and in a SQL, when you prefix with double dash, it is comment. Okay. So I would like to go about creating a schema here, and the statement. So for creating schema, it has to be with SQL statement. There's no other flexibility. You'll say create schema and schema name. This is how you have to formulate this. Create schema and name of the schema what you would like to create. So if this is a or, you can also extend this statement this way. Create schema so and so owned by username. Okay, now look at this. If I go with this SQL statement saying create schema name, it does create a database. We can refer schema as a database schema. Anything is okay. Okay, it does create the schema, and this will be accessed only by the user who is actually creating it. If I just say create schema name, the schema what gets created will be accessed by the user who has created that schema. Let's say we have user 1 and user 2. We have logged in as user 1, but I would like to create a schema which will be accessed by user 2 bus. Then I'll say create schema name owned by, I log in with user 1, but I'm going to create a schema which will be accessed by user 2 bus. Then I would say create schema name owned by user 2. That's how it is. Okay, but I've logged in with system user, I would like to create some schema which I will have access to. So I'm not worried on owned by. So I'll say what create schema. Then what is it? Cubics. Say 8 cubics is my schema. So I'm going to use this schema. Select this and execute this. Now when I execute this statement, you get this information saying this statement has been executed successfully. It has taken so much of time. Okay. Now once this schema has been executed, you should all your database artifacts will be in which folder? Catalog or containers? Catalog. Now when I refresh this, I should see a schema called 8 cubics. I don't want to see others, so I just want to filter it for 8 cubics. Now I have this schema. Okay, boss? And I will have access to this schema because I've logged in with system user. I have created my schema, so this user will have complete access onto this schema. So you can do create, delete, alter, anything you can be doing on this schema. Okay. But if I want this to be associated to a different user, then you will say what? Create schema so and so owned by different users. That is one. one more point to be noted is for every user we create in HANA, for every user you create in HANA, it will create a schema with that name. And that user will have access to that schema. For example, say, how do we create new user? Let's go to security. What is users? Right click, say what? New user. So let's create new user saying, say, Cubex user, say 81, and some password. And just say activate. Okay. I've not granted anything, but just say activate. Now what I'll do, I want to connect to the same HANA system with the different user, which user 81. Select the same connection, right click, you can say what? Add the same system, but what? You can straight away say add system where you start specifying all the server details, but if it's already given, you say right click, I would connect to the same system but with a different user. Cubex user 81, and when you log in for the first time, it does ask you for the change of the password. So, so this is a system connected with the new user 81. If he gets into catalog folder, you will get to see a schema called Cubex user 81. For every user you create, you would have a schema with the same username, and this user will have complete access on the schema. Okay. Now what I want next important thing is, let's say I have this schema called 8 cubics. Now I would like to authorize this user, what? Cubex user 81 to have access to that schema called 8 cubics. This is all fine, right? Till here. Now I have logged in with system user and we have created a schema called 8 cubics. Now I would like to provide authorizations on this schema 8 cubics to a different user called what? Cubex user 81. How do I grant that? Okay. Now what is that you want to grant? I just want to grant only select. You should only read data from that schema, nothing else. No alteration, nothing. Okay. I can do this either with UI or with SQL statement. I can grant the operations on the schema to the user with SQL statement or with UI also. Let me show you with UI. Let me get into the user with system user. System user will have all the authorizations. What is this? I'll open this 81 user again. What is this here? You'll have a tab called object privileges. In this object privileges, you'll control the authorizations specific to catalog objects, all the database authorizations, database object authorizations, and a schema, table, view, all the, if you want to provide authorizations on some of the database artifacts or database objects, we provide authorizations in this tab. What is this tab here? Object privileges. Now I'll go to object privileges. By default, you'll have the schema. Should I give him another schema here? I'll say what? What will say? Add. What is schema name? You want to give him 8 cubics. Select this schema, save OK. So I provide authorizations for this schema, and on this schema, what activities should we be able to do? Should we be able to create anything on this, alter, drop, or execute, select, or what is it you want? Select or something, let's say, and you would like to allow this user to grant authorization to others also. You will have authorizations to select, read from that schema any object, and from there you can access, you can provide authorizations to different user again. Okay, and this with UI you can do this way. Okay, now if you open this, if you open the user, you will see this schema has been authorized for this schema here, right? Now once this is done, if I go to the connection way of this user, and if I refresh once, we'll start seeing 8 cubics now. Now we'll have access, but he'll only have authorizations to read us, right? I can do that way, and one more way of doing it is, let's say, I'll go to this 81, and I will remove this again. I would want to clean this. I don't want. I would like to remove the authorizations now back. It's like revoked. I have revoked the authorizations now. When I do this, when I get to this user, just refresh, you'll no more see 8 cubics. So like this, I can also grant the authorizations on this schema to a different user with select statement, with SQL statement also. Make sure I have connected to this SQL console with which user was. So system user is executing this command. Yes, system user will have authorizations to control other users also. So how do you grant him? Say grant. What operations do you want to allow him to do on the schema? Select. Grant select on what? You want to grant select on what? On schema. Which schema is it? 8 cubics. To whom? To cubics user 81. It's same as that. And if you want to allow him to give up, you remove that yes and no. I'll say with. When I say with grant option means it's like I'm setting yes there. Anything you can do with UI, you can obviously do with SQL statement also. So I'm granting select on schema 8 cubics to user cubics user 81 with grant option. I'm doing the same. Whatever I've done with UI, I'm doing with the SQL statement. Just select this and say what? Execute. Now executed it. Even now you'll see that this user will have access to that 8 cubics now. Yes. Will it do changes in the UI automatically? If I go to 81 and open the definition, you will see that it's been enabled the same way what I've done. Whatever you've done with UI, I could have done with, I've done the same thing with SQL statement with grant option also. Okay, boss? Yeah. Okay, this is about the schema, boss. I would like to remove that connection. I don't need this anymore. So that is about schema. And you know that by default there will be some default schema, sysbi and sysbig, very important. We'll come to that later. So I've got my schema ready now. And under the schema, I can go over creating any of these database objects. We refer them as database artifacts or database objects like what? Tables, views, triggers, synonyms, sequences, procedures, all this can be, we can go over developing all this under the schemas. Every database object will be qualified with the schema name. Say if I refer to some table, I should specify to which schema does this table belong to. It's always referred as schema name dot table, schema name dot view, schema name dot procedure, schema name dot column view, anything. All your database objects are qualified by database name or nothing but your schema names. Okay, boss. So there's nothing in it. It's just a blank database which I would like to formulate now. The next point is I would like to focus on creating my database table. So you might have created this table in some other database SQL server, or you might have created in SAP applications with SC level. You give table name, say create, you give description, you give all same. You can go about creating table with UI also. You don't have to write your SQL statement in creating a table. I can create it with UI also. Now we're going to see about creating a table with UI now. But do you remember we have two types of tables, row store and column store in HANA? Yeah. So look at how do I go about creating it. Select this tables folder. In the catalog folder, expand your schema. Then you will find a tables folder. A tables folder నుంచి అర్థం చేసుకోవాలి. ఇక్కడ నుంచి క్రియేట్ చేయాలంటే ఏం చేయాలి చెప్పు, నువ్వే చెప్పు. Right click కొట్టాలి అంతే. Right click or double click అంతే. Just right click on it and you see an option called what? What is new table అంతే. You tell me from there on. Once you get to that, you should be able to tell me now. New table. What is it asking me? Name of the table. So I'm going with simple table. So what is the name of the table? Employee. Then what is it here? Under which schema do you want to create? I want it to be under 8 cubics only. What is it here? Column store. We'll discuss on this table type later, but not now. Whether you want to go with row store or column. I want to go with what? Column store. Okay. That's where you choose a type of table what you want to create. Then what does this tab says? Column. What do you understand with this? Every table would have columns. I should list out what columns do I need to have in this table. So I just want to go with employee number, and this is the name of the technical name of the column, and this will be what? Data type. You'll have varchar, like any database. You'll have the same varchar, nvarchar, integer, tiny integer, double, float, timestamp, binary, blob. You'll have all these data types available there. I'm just going with varchar is fine, or I can say integer. For integer, you don't specify any length, and I would enable this would make it as what? Primary keys. You remember in SQL you have checkbox. You just have to click this, indicate, and not nullable means it cannot be null. Okay, and you want to provide some description here. Say what? Comment is like employee what number. That's it. I just want another name as what? EMP name, and you can also give space. No problem. You can also give space. Underscore is also allowed. Varchar, if it is varchar, I need to specify the length 20, and then I would say comment as what? Nothing but this employee name. I just want department number. I want this to be integer again. This is not a primary key, and then I'll say. That's it. I wanted a table with these 3 columns. That is it. Let's not worry on these now. Just say active. Just say active. This is my table. So when I say activate this, internally it is actually executing some what is this? It is executing some SQL statements in doing this. It is all you go to creating table with the UI, but when you activate internally, it does formulate the corresponding SQL statements and get it executed and have the table created for you. Yeah? And you see, if I refresh here, you see this table. You can suppose you want to edit this table after the table has been created. You want to edit it. I can still do that. I can just select this table, right click, and say what? Open definition. You get this table out here. Just select this table, right click, and say what? What is it? But it is not editable. You should make sure you enable this option, edit. ఇప్పుడు చూసి ఇక్కడ ఈ చెక్ బాక్స్ ఎనేబుల్ అయిందా? Now you can edit it. Let's say you want to add one more column, say EMP sal. I would set this as decimal. Then I'll say what is this? Employee salary. So this is 10 of 2 is like 2 decimal because it is a decimal, specific decimal points. Like this, you can edit your tables. Okay, and this is a tab you can basically create your indexes. We'll come to that later. And there are some further properties which we can maintain. So there are some tables like global temporary table. We'll see those table types. And then in the runtime information, you can basically see how much memory has been occupied by this table. Look at this. It's a column store, right? Look at this. How much memory has been occupied by what? Main storage. How much has been occupied for delta storage, and down. Suppose if this table is been partitioned, can we partition the table? Yes. If the table is partitioned, below it will show me all the partitions, what is there created under this table, and all this information is available on this. This is how you can create a table with the UI. Next option is, can I also create, I think the same way if I drop, in the drop, if I select roster, it gives what? Roster. See, this icon will tell you all this. Say if you see the lines in the columns vertical like this, it means it's a column store table. Let's say I create one. I'll say what? Roster. This will be a row store table. What is table create? Row table. Okay, good. If I refresh, you should see the difference here. You see icon indicating horizontal line, that indicates it's a row store table. But while creating, there's nothing much difference here. For you, just except the option row store or column store, creating a table either row or column is pretty much same. Okay. Good question. He's saying, can we change the type of table once it has been created from row store to column store? Good. He's saying, let's say it's created a column store table. Can I convert that to a row store table? But look at this. If I open the definition, if I want to edit this table, when I go to the edit, I can't do this. When I go to the edit mode of this table, I can't change the table type. With the UI, you don't have a flexibility of converting your table type from row store to column or column to row store. But in the SQL, do we have a statement called alter? When you want to create a new database object, you will use create statement. When you want to change the definition of a database object, we use what? Alter. By using alter statement, I can alter the definite type of the table. For example, if I go to see, I can do this way. Like it's an alter table. Which table you want to alter? The column row is them. I would like to alter this table. Type. Alter table. So and so type column. Alter table. Table type. Alter the table. 1 second. Alter table so and so. Alter type is what? Is already column. Sorry. See, that is already a column, so I'm changing it to rows. Done. If I refresh this now, so what is this now? Now it shows it as what? Roster. So I'll say again I will execute the same. Alter table so and so, alter the type as what? Column. Then you should see this as what? Back to what? Column store. So we can change the type of table by using alter statement, but not from the UI bus. Okay. Yeah, even when there's data, I can still change it. Even when there's data in this table, I can still change the type of the table. No issues. Okay. We are creating a table, right? Now the point is, can I create table even with the SQL statement bus? Yes. Now, if you're not comfortable writing SQL statement, what you can just open up some UI one and then right click on this, and you can say what is export SQL. This will give me the SQL statement what it was used to create the table. So you want to go with a different name, I can just change this name as 01 and execute all the statement. Now this will create another table for me, employee 0. I can just export the SQL statement from the graphical one and understand what it is saying. What does it says? Create a type of column or type of table and the name of the table, and then you're listing out all the columns one by one, and then separate with commas, and then you specify the primary key of the table. and then the tables. We'll come to this unload priority, auto merge. Clear in this bus? And then this is about comment is about what those descriptions, nothing else. Clear in this?
What is the max length of character?
Max 1000, I think. 1024. I'll come to the exceptions. Size of a table is 2 TB. Size of a column is depends on the day type also. If it is varchar, you can go with huge, but it depends. If you go with text, it will have lots of length again. If you go with string, it'll extend, but there's some limitation again. There's some like 1024 or some there is some limitation. Like 1024. Okay. So I would like to create my table with the UI. I can just say like this. So I just want to create my table with this. I can just create simple. So I just want to create simple column store table and I'll say create and I'll use a keyword what? Column for column store table, row for row store table, and create table. Name of the schema in which you want the table to be created, and this is the table name, and these are the columns. Column 1, date type is int, and not null. I want to set it as not null constraint, and what? It's going to be a primary key, and employee name and varchar 20. And now, and if I just execute this is EMP, right? Table name is EMP. Now you'll see the table created first. What is table? EMP is a table. Next, if you just use a keyword as what? Row. There's already an EMP row table. It says cannot duplicate table. I have say EMP row 01 and then next. EMP rows, it is created row store table again. And the point is, if I don't specify any type, if I just say create table, what table does it create? Row. If I refresh, so tell me what is this? If you don't specify anything, by default it is row. And for column, you have to explicitly specify it by using the keyword columns. And one more thing is, so I'm trying to create a table called matplant. I want it as column store table. So you'll have create table with the table name and you specify the list of columns what I want. So I'm specifying column name in double quotes, table name in double quotes, schema name. It's not mandatory that you specify in double quotes. But if I want to enable a space in this, any special characters, then double quote becomes mandatory. So even if you don't have double special characters in the identifier, whether column name, table, you don't need double quotes. But we don't know when we will use it. So start practicing with double quotes. Whether it has got special characters, it still considers it. Okay. So I want mat. I want this as integer, and I want this as not null bus. Then I want to have what? Plant. I want it as varchar of length. I want as what? 20. And I don't want this also to be null. Something like say color. Varchar of 20. That's fine. But do I need to define the primary key on this? Normal in the previous case, I was just specifying primary key as I used the keyword primary key just side of the column. But here, my requirement is I want plant and metal both to be primary key. Like you'll say composite primary key. When two or more columns together as like this, you can have 16 columns as primary key max. When two or more columns together, we refer to How do you define composite key? Once you list out the columns, we'll say we use a keyword at the bottom, primary key, and what all columns you want? Mat, comma, then what? Plant. Because if it is multiple columns, you can't specify it here. Okay. Okay, and then you'll have a table called mat plant where you see both the columns as primary key. Metal, see look at this, mat and plant both are primary key into this table. Okay, fine. Okay, I have this table. I just want to insert some data into this table, and I just want to see. But I'm not teaching about insert statement, but just a simple. Since we have a table, I just want to insert some two records and then see the data into this. So if you don't know about insert statement, you can say generate. You can right click on this table, generate, and say what? Insert statement. This will give you a base how it has to be. You say insert into what? Yeah, always database object is qualified by the schema name. So specify insert into this table values. First is I know it's employee number, so I'll say 1. Next is employee name, say then it is department number, I'll say 10. Then it's salary set, I'll say 1200.50 something. If you see, when I'm specifying the integers, I'm specifying without single quotes. And when you want to specify a string or text, it has to be in single quotes. Select this and say execute. It says you get a message, it has been inserted. Same thing, I would like to insert another 2-3 records. I'll say ID is 2 and ID is 3 and ID is 4. Okay, I want to make this as 15. And I just want. And I want to insert these 3 records also. Done. So now this table should have the database. If I get into this table, right click, say what? Open content, I can see the data labels. This row number is by default. It's a system column which tells me the row number. Don't worry on that. These are the actual employee number, employee name, department number, and employee salary. So you can go to insert data into this table and right click and you can see the content also. And if you want to use this table and do some, we call that data profiling. I just want to see what is the total net sale, total salaries, or if you want to see what are distinct employee names or distinct departments. I want to do some kind of profiling and understand deep into the table. Because if I just say content, it's just showing me the content of the table. But if I want to do some more profiling and analyze the data, let's say the table is really huge, I want to analyze, then what I can do, I can right click on this table. This is not for the individual, this is for you to understand the data in the table. You can say open data preview. You can see the raw data like this, or you can see distinct values of any of this. I know there are 4 records, but department distinct is only 10, 20, and 30. If you see, if you just drag it, it says for 10, the value 10 department, I've got 2 rows. For department values 20, I see 1 row, and for 30, I see 1 row. I can see unique values. Or if I go to analysis, I can do this. I want to see total employee salary. Total employee salary is around something so and so. Yeah, you can see this in chart form, or you can choose what type of chart you want. Or department wise, I want to spread this out. So I want to see this as a pie chart. I can change this out. You can visualize the data in any way you want. Table format, grid format, HTML format. Apart from department, I also want to see employee number, not number. Let's say I want to see employee name. You see, and I want to see this as based on the department and employee name wise. I see a split table, grid, or HTML, anything you can see. This is more of you are trying to analyze the data in these tables. Then we can go with data. This is not like reporting environment for individuals. This is for you to analyze the data into those tables. అంటే ఈ కాలంలో ఏమేమి వాల్యూస్ ఉన్నాయి, ఎన్ని వాల్యూస్ ఉన్నాయి, అట్లా you want to do some more of data profiling and understand the profiling of the data into the database, you can get to use this option. Okay, boss. We were able to insert some sample data and then see the data, right? Now, even if I connect this with the different user, what is it, 81, and we have given him select authorizations, right? For on 8 cubics, even he should be able to see the data in the tables. One data confusion, because I said you'll have authorizations for select is for reading. You can just read data from that, okay? But if he tries to change the definition, ఒప్పుకుంటానా? You cannot execute alter. It doesn't have authorizations to change the table, only for reading. Okay. So you understood this is like normal table where now once the different user has got access to this schema, he is also able to see the definition. He is also able to see the content. Okay, but there are different types of tables we can play with now. Without this, okay. So the next point is, let's say I already have a table called employee with some data in it. Can I create a table similar to this kind of table again by using like copy from? Let's say I want to create a copy of this table with along with the data or without data I can do. I can say it this way. Create column table in which schema you want 8 cubics copy employee and you can say as, and you can provide a definite, you can have a select saying select star from which table. If you see this select, this will give me the data. This is like reading all the data of this table. I would like to use this subquery. I would like to use this, if I execute this selection, it just gives me all the data. And I would like to use this result to create my table. I'll say create table so and so as by using this sub select. When I use this sub select and create, it creates with the database. Yeah. I can use this statement like copy. I can use the sub select on this table to create a copy employee. So you see this with the database. Okay. And you can also say create column table copy employee 01, and you can use like employees. Normally when I use this like operator and create a table, it does not copy the data, only the structure is copied. If you copy employee 01 and you see, if you go to content, you see the structure, but there is no data copied. When I create a copy table by using the subquery, it creates the copy of the table with the data. But when I create a copy, say create column table like so and so by using this like operator, only the structure is copied. There is no data copied along with it. But using like operator, I also can copy with the data by using this. Create copy employee 02 table like this table. If I use this operator, what with data, it creates a copy with like operator. But I'm going to create with what? With data. I can use like operator, and if I use the extra command, say with the data, it copies with the data also. And even when I'm creating a table with this sub select, by default it takes data, right? By default it takes data, but I can use sub select, but try to get without data also. I'll say with either default with data. If you want to control it not to have data, then I'll say what with no data. If you see the definition, you only have structure, but sorry. If you see the content, you only see the definition, but there's no. Even though I'm using subselect to copy the table, if I use a keyword with the data or without no data, I can control whether data to be used to be copied or not. Okay. Next one, you'll have some concept called global tables. You know about primary key and foreign key, that's okay. Every table will have primary key which is unique, and foreign key, like when the primary key of one table takes for another table, becomes foreign. Just have it is recorded, just look at this and you can handle. Yeah, next one, there's some new concept called global temporary tables. Global, you know, but now row store and columns, those are like normal standard tables. But while creating table, you can go over creating different types. Something like global temporary table is one type of it. Okay, temporary tables, global temporary, local temporary, different types. Okay? What is what you understand? Now we'll say like normal SQL. It's not so different. There's some changes to that SQL. Otherwise, some keywords. Otherwise, it's pretty much same. No. I'm just using this. We are focusing on global temporary tables. Except this keyword, every rest all is same. So I'm saying create. Instead of just saying column, I'm just saying global temporary column tables. Global temporary column table. Yeah, good. So I'm just creating this table with EMPID and some name. Sorry. So I'm just creating this global temporary table. And do I see this table here? EMP temp column. Yeah? EMP, I'm able to see that. Okay, and I insert some data. I'm inserting some 4 records into this table. Okay, and I'm just running a select, which will basically show me data from the select star from this table result. I'm just seeing this 4 records. Okay, boss. Okay. Now I take this statement and open one more SQL, and I run this. I don't see any data. I don't see any data here. Okay, now let me close this out. So this, you have table, right? If I try to see the content, do I see any data in it? There's no data. But let's say I open a new session. I open a SQL session. I insert some data. Okay. Now within this session, I get to see data in this table. If I just close this session and run a select on this table, nothing but as good as reading, select star from what? I don't see any data. So when I say global temporary table, the definition of the table is global. Means even if I go to a different user or different any session you get in, 8 cubics. One good table confusion. EMP temp. You can so the structure of the table or definition of the table is global. You can see it from any number of sessions, but the content of the table is local, specific to that session alone. ఆ సెషన్ లో డేటా ఇన్సర్ట్ చేసింది ఆ సెషన్ వరకు కనిపిస్తుంది మళ్ళీ ఉండదు. The content of this table is specific to that particular session. That is called as global temporary tables. Actually ఏమైంటుందంటే if you see in further properties they would have set this as temporary table type as global. Suppose if you're creating with UI, you can in the drop down you can choose it as global. That becomes a global temporary column sort. You can table create just for example new table. You can further properties scale you can drop down set this as what global. If you want to create this global temporary table from the UI, you just have to use this option temporary table type as global. So when you create a global temporary table, what does it mean? The structure of the table is global. Everyone can use a table. You can fire a select on the table always. But the content of the table is specific to that particular session. Our runtime session lo matram data untundi. It is more, can I say, more like an internal table. Internal table kuda definition is also not global, but this is where the definition is global. But when you can use this in writing stored procedures when you want to store some temporary result. So what happens? Only during runtime of the procedure, the data is stored in the table. Once the procedure is out, when the session is closed, the data memory is freed again. There's no data stored in it. Okay, boss? Next. Then there is a concept called again the global temporary table. Then there is a concept called local temporary table. SQL. Okay, this is I just use a keyword what now? Local. Instead of using the keyword global, I say what? Local. Okay. Create local temporary column store. It's a column store table which is local and temporary. And whenever you're creating local temporary table, the table name must be prefixed with hash. Compulsory. The local temporary tables, the name of the tables must be prefixed with hash here. Okay. And one more point, these tables can never have primary key. The primary key undu. The local temporary tables cannot have primary key. So I'm just creating this table with two columns again, same employee ID and all this stuff. What is the name of the table you create? Remember, emp temp local column. That's my table. The table's name is created. And then I'm just inserting some 4 records into this table, 1, 2, 3, and Pratap. And I'm just running a select. So it just shows me those 4 records. Okay, Nana? So what I'll do now, first thing you have to observe is what is the table name? emp temp local column. Refresh. Do you see the table name? emp temp local glow, emp temp local glow. Okay. Close this session out and open a session again. We already executed these statements, right? We already created table, select was inserted was all. Now let me just run select. So error is there's no data in the table under the table pair. It says there is no table with this name under this. So I've just whichever the session you create this table, it is valid only for that session. And once the session is out, the table is no more visible. This exactly internal table only during the runtime of that session, you create this temporary table, you insert data into it, you use the data. Then once we are out of that session, the table is dropped and data is also dropped. No more memory allocated for the table. That is called as local temporary tables. And when you with UI, you cannot create this local temporary table. It has to be created from the SQL because UI lo kanipichinదంటే global lag kadana. So you don't have the top while creating UI, you don't have the option of local temporary table. You have to go with SQL. Just say create local temporary column store table what you want. That's it. Anta normal column list data types is all common. And the definition of the table is local to that session and content is also local to that session. In case of global, what is happening? Definition is global, but the content is local to that particular session. But here the definition of the table and content of the table is also local to that session also. That's the difference between global and temporary tables. Okay. Okay. Next, logging. ఇదేం లేదు బస్ యాక్చువల్గా పెద్ద కాన్సెప్ట్ ఏం కాదు. Can we have table? Can we have table primary key? For global, you can have primary key, but for local, you can't have primary key. Next is in which scenario you do something. Let's say you're writing some stored procedures. You want to store some temporary results which are specific to that sessions. Then I can go using this global or temporary tables. You want to make definition global, but content I want to make it specific to that only during runtime of the stored procedure I want to allocate the memory. Then I can use global or local. Okay. Tell me and yes, I can. ఇది పెద్ద కాన్సెప్ట్ ఏం కాదన్నా యూ జస్ట్ there's some concepts even when you're creating this table when there's a property called what? No log. By default logging, and then if you want to set it as no logging, we use this option, no logging. Now what does it mean when you say no logging? Look at this. Default it is logging, and you can control the property to be set as what? No logging. Actually what happens is normally if it is temporary or global, the data is becoming specific to session. What it is here, I insert a lot of data into this table. Once it reaches, if the memory reaches 80% of the memory storage, this data will be freed into this table. When I set it as no logging, what happens? When the main memory reaches 80% of the usage, the data in this table will be dropped after certain time retention period what is specified. Let's say if I specify as 300 seconds, after 300 seconds, this data in this table will be removed only if the main memory usage is 80%. But if main memory usage is not 80%, you will still see data, even after 300 seconds, you will still see data in this table. It should satisfy both. It should overcome 300 seconds, okay, and then your RAM should be used by 80%, then this data will be freed in this table. That is called as no logging option. Here you can say, look at the simple. So if you see, I'm just creating column store table. I'm saying what? Yes, if it is SQL, you say no logging, retention is what? 300 to 300 seconds on it. If it is UI, you don't have any time. You just say what? Say no logging in that option, further properties. So run this, and you will insert. You will still see this data, but my RAM is not used. But when does the data? It is global, general, normal like type. What is employee number logging? This is a table. You can see as a global table. You can see the content in different sessions. But when is this table dropped? After it crosses 300 seconds, and if the RAM usage is 80%, then the data is dropped into this table. That is called as logging or no logging. Then we have something called auto merge. Do you know what is merging? Your column store will have delta table, main table, and to move the data from delta table to main table, we do what? Delta merge. And delta merge will have lots of different types. And very type auto merge, auto merge ante system will take care of merging it, and rest all we have to do. Smart merge gaani, forced and will not worry on that. While creating table, you can specify auto merge should be enabled or not. While creating table, if you enable auto merge on auto merge, then your merge dog, which is a system process, will take care about triggering merging on this table. If you switch off the auto merge, you have to explicitly you control it to trigger the merging on the table. So while creating table, we can control whether the auto merge should be switched on or switched off. Okay, boss. So while creating table, if you're doing this, you SQL if you use this, if you don't use this keyword, what does it mean? Auto merge is enabled on this. While creating table, you switch on the auto merge or no. If you switch on auto merge, what happens? System will within the system, you'll have a process called merge dog, which will take care about triggering the merging process on this table. And if you say no auto merge, system is nowhere responsible for triggering merging. We have to explicitly trigger merging on this table, either it is smart merge or forced merge or critical merge, or we'll see that later. System responsibility ఉందా లేదా? సిస్టమ్ ఆటోమేటిక్ చేసుకోవాలంటే ఆటో మర్జ్ ఆన్ చేస్తాం. సిస్టమ్ చేసుకోవద్దు నేను చేసుకుంటా అంటే ఆటో మర్జ్ ఆఫ్ చేస్తాం. If you just leave it as auto merge, it is like switched on. And if I use this keyword no ante, auto merge is switched off. Let's say we also have this function. Let's say while creating table, you have switched on the auto merge. Later I can change the definition of the table using alter statement and switch off the merging also. While creating table, let's say you switched on the auto merge. I can use alter statement and switch off the auto merge. Or let's say while creating table, you switched off the auto merge, and while I can use alter and switch on the auto merge. I can change the definition of the table by using alter statement on the merging auto merge functionality. What is the best practice? Generally, if it is for BW on HANA, if there is some applications which are saying whether should I on or should I off. If you're using HANA as a database of certain applications, we would basically switch off the auto merge, and applications will control when the merging should be triggered. In the BW process change or something, we would be triggering the merging. If you're using this as a standalone database, then I would go with what? Auto merging, where system will take care of merging, because there's no application which can do that. If I have some ECC application or BW application which is sitting on top of HANA, then I'll give control to the application. When it wants to trigger, let it trigger the merging. But if I'm using standalone HANA database, there's no application sitting on top of it, then I'll give control to the HANA system to perform the merging. Then I'll go with what? Auto merge. Standalone database low, I'll give control to the HANA database to trigger whether merging or not by using what? Switching on the auto merge. If I'm leveraging applications running on the HANA database, I'll give control to the application to trigger merging. Then I'll switch off the auto merge and give control to the applications, let it trigger whenever it wants. Inka depth maadadte, let's say if it is BW, let's say you have a cube, and the underlying table of a cube is your column store table. Let's say you're loading some millions of data bus. Assume the fact table of your cube is switched on with auto merge bus, and you're loading huge amount of data bus, millions of data. At the middle of the load, when you've loaded some, let's say 5 lakhs or 6 lakh records, the decision function of auto merge is satisfied and system triggers auto merge them. During the middle, when it is in the process of loading, it is triggering merging bus. That will affect my loading performance. So I'll prefer to switch on the auto merge, finish off all my loading, then trigger my merging. In that case, will I prefer switching on or switching off? Switching off or the auto merge. So if I'm working on some applications where my HANA database is being used as a database for it, then I'll give the control to the application to trigger the merging. If I'm using standalone HANA database, I'll give control to HANA database itself to trigger the merging. If I need to give control to the HANA database to trigger merging, then I'll switch on the auto merge. Application can I'll switch off the auto merge. Okay.
What is the default?
Do we have the syntax cell like ECC syntaxes? Yeah, we'll always there's a PDF document. I'll tell you how to use the syntax document. You'll always have the syntax document for this SQL statements always. What is it? Yeah, you just use this keyword and then no, without no, it is like what? Enabling auto merge, and no is like switching off the auto merge. I'm just creating this table where auto merge is switched off. Sorry. So this is like creating a table without auto merge. Now, if there's no auto merge, then what? I need to explicitly control the merging process. When we need to control the merging process, it could be smart merge, or it could be forced merge, or critical merge, or what we'll see all this. Depth మళ్ళీ చూద్దాము. But this is while creating table, we can control it to switch on or switch off the auto merge. అంతవరకే. Okay. Yeah.
What is the default?
By default, auto merge is switched on. You see, you create this table, right? You never specified anything while creating UI. You don't have control whether to switch on or switch off. If I see this export SQL and see this, what does this say? Auto merge అని పెట్టింది. No NO లేదు దాని ముందర. No ఉంటే అప్పుడు auto merge off అన్నట్టు. So by default when you create table, auto merge is been switched on. Okay, and you should explicitly use a keyword no auto merge to switch it off. Okay.
Can we do this automatic application? In table, not with
Screen లో UI లో లేదు.
then if we are getting data, I mean, if we are finding tables from data, we don't write any code, but
Then I'll use alter statement to alter this. He's saying you only have the option of switching on or switching off in the SQL statement. Let's say the user who has created this table in the UI and is activating, by default what happens? Automatically switched on. Then how do I switch it off? Then I'll explicitly use the alter statement on this table, say switch the merging off, sorry, auto merge off. That's it. We can do that. Next, there is something called unload priority bus. Other day we've discussed something called unload priority. What is this unload priority bus? We have concepts called load and unload. When you say load means what? The data from the data volume disk is load. We load the data into what? Main memory. And when you say unload, the data in the memory has been dropped, right? We'll have two operations. One is load and unload. When you say load the table, the data of this table is loaded into main memory bus. And when I say unload this table, the data of this table in the main memory has been dropped. Okay. So that is like explicit statements. Explicitly you execute commands like load, unload, that is what happens. Right? Now what I want, let's say there is a table which is already loaded into main memory bus. Will it be unloaded? If you use explicitly statement unload, it unloads, but by default it does not unload. But by default, let's say when the main memory is full, it has to unload some tables. Which table should it unload first depends on the property called unload priority. You can specify the unload priority from 0 to 9. Higher the priority, it means it will be unloaded earlier. So while the table is created, we can specify the unload priority. It unload priority చెప్పడం వల్ల unload అయిపోదు table. ఇంకా మన కాన్సెప్ట్ లోకి వెళ్ళలే, లోడింగ్ కి దానిలోకి వెళ్ళలే. It will not unload it immediately. When the let's say the tables are loaded, at some point of time the memory gets filled, then it has free this memory space for what? It has free the memory space, then it has to unload some tables. Now which table is unloaded first depends on the priority. The table with highest priority will be unloaded first from the main memory. Okay. So while creating the table, you can specify this unload priority. It is 0 to 9. Higher the number, it's unload earliest. Okay. And 0 అంటే కొద్దిగా ఇంకా వెయిట్ చేస్తాం. That's the table last it is unloaded. So you can control it. So I want it as 5 and medium. See, with this statement, am I unloading or loading? చేయడంలో ప్రాపర్టీ సెటప్ చేస్తున్నాను అంతే. And loading the table into main memory, unloading will be all data manipulation statement. This is all about while creating table, you don't worry about that. We are just setting up the unload priority flag, saying when this table is loaded into main memory, if the concept comes about unloading, this table must be unloaded first, or this should not be unloaded first. By using this unload priority. Okay. And just set this. Atla. Even if you look at this table, which is by default created, you have this unload priority by default set and as what? 5. You can always, by using the alter statement, you can alter the property of unload priority. 9 and generally for tables like PSA, all this stuff, we would set that as generally we would not store in unortal, but let's say I've got ODS active table, which I'm not frequently using, but so I would unload those tables earlier than the cubes which I'm really using it for reporting more frequently. I've got two DSOs. One is very frequently used, one is not frequently used. The one which is frequently used, I'll try to unload it I'll not unload it earlier. So I'll set the priority to something like 3 or 2. The ODs which I'm not really frequently used, I'll set the priority to 8 or 9. So this ODs will be unloaded first than the other ODs under control. Yeah. If you use the unload, then it will drop the data in main table. No. Either you load or unload. No, none of the data is dropped in the main or delta. No. Okay. But if it will default store the data in main table only, right? And actually, column store will have delta and main, right? It will have the same images in the disk also. Don't have to worry. When you say when I unload the table, I lose the data in the delta table. Nothing is lost. Don't have to worry. Okay. So we'll stop it here, bus, and tomorrow we have to get into partitioning and that stuff. And there's some we're just touching on data definition, and then we'll get into views and synonyms like this. Okay, fine. Thanks. If you use unload them, then it will drop the data. Nothing is dropped when you unload. Okay.